Hello, Ross Jordan from Inquiring International. We are still working through the CMMC compliance requirements for level 1, self-certification, self-attestation. We are now in Chapter 3, Section 10, where we're talking about physical protection. Physical protection in plain English is exactly that. It's the building. It's the structure in which your people work within. How are you protecting them, and are you protecting them? This one's got a little bit of a unique position. Think that every employee that works for you, when they are doing work for you off-site, you're also responsible for their physical protection there as well. So if you've got a maintenance guy running to Granger to pick up parts, or you got a sales guy that's running around somebody else's plant, you need to think about the physical protection of those employees when they're on those sites. So, plain English, it's the building. What's this mean for my company? Again, you probably have all this lined out for the most part. It just needs to be documented, needs to be written out. You need to think about somebody's physical security, again, off-site. What do they do when they're there? Are they in a dangerous environment? Are they being sent somewhere where there's a dangerous environment, where there may be bomb threats, or there may be construction, or there may be anything of that could cause physical harm. So think about what requirements you hold your employees to if they're in those environments. Hey, are you unsafe? Do you feel unsafe? You need to let me know. Is there something we don't know about that's going on there? You need to tell us. So physical security goes beyond your doing the building itself, but goes also to their extension of those employees on site, other places. So keep that in mind. Questions for IT. We're going to get to that here at the end, but more importantly, on this one, the physical assets that you use for your building, RFIDs, those are where the questions are going to lie for those guys. Okay, so we're going to talk about the physical access, credentials, RFID cards, keys. I was with somebody on site one time, and they said, everything's back there in that closet. I'm like, great, is it locked? They said, yeah. I said, who has access to it? And they looked at me like, I don't know. And I said, change the lock, then you'll find out. It's a very inexpensive way to make sure that you only have people that you want access to that physical location having access to that physical location. Change a lock, change an RFID, do something like that, and watch the hands rise, and you'll be like, you don't need access to that room. So clean that up, make sure that you're doing that. Also think about the physical protection, a threat protection. If there's a scenario, now that these modern days we're looking at things like threats to your employees, mass shootings. I hate to even say things like that, but you have to think about, what do you do in that scenario? What do you do in that situation? If somebody comes into your building with the intent to harm somebody, what actions do you have in place to manage that? Who's in charge of that? Maybe you don't have a physical guard, or you don't have anybody armed in your environment. I hope you don't have to have those things, but if you may need them, who is that person? Where are they at? And what are their responsibilities in that situation? Think about physical 911. What do you do? How do you communicate? Are your building numbers marked? Are your rooms numbered? Are your conference rooms named? So if there's any physical situation, you know exactly where those things are. Make sure your employees understand how to communicate that information to law enforcement or to the fire department, if that's the case, where you have a fire in a section of your room, of your building. Are there hazardous chemicals on there? Are there metals that don't get put out with water, or Lord forbid, or cause more harm if they do touch water? So make sure the physical assets that you have not only are protected, but they are protected beyond just a day-to-day activity. You need to think of protecting them in an emergency situation as well. Your auditing and controls of this. Again, change a lock, change an RFID, watch the hands come up as to who can't access things anymore. Make sure that you're doing that, and that you do that regularly. There's a cadence, so those are changed every 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, whatever you do. Alternative work locations. Again, we're going back to a physical asset. If something happens or there's damage, where does somebody work? Or think about where your customers need to access you, where your vendors need to come. If there's a bay that's destroyed or destruction, or there was damage to it and it can't be used anymore, how are you communicating that out? Who's responsible for communicating that? So let's go into the questions now for your IT team. Where are our RFID codes kept, who has them, which doors are managed, are there doors that need maintenance, are there doors that we should have keys or RFIDs for. Ask them about data security, physical security as well. So if we have to close off this area for, I don't know, maybe there's a violent act, somebody's there that you don't want there, how do you disseminate stopping those computers from having access? Because somebody's not going to log out in an emergency situation. They're just going to run away from their desk, right? So again, it's physical. You need to figure out how it is that you manage that. Video surveillance. Real quick story about a guy I worked with in Chicago who had a plant who had a fire hydrant right out front, and it was a very important fire hydrant. Fire marshal was actually a good friend, and he would come by on a regular basis and say, "Hey, Bob, you gotta get that car out of front of the hydrant. I'll let it go today, but we're not going to let it happen anymore." Well, that wasn't one of their employees. They didn't know whose car that was, and obviously it was marked big yellow, do not park, and a big red banding around it. They couldn't figure out whose car it was, but it was the same car all the time. Turns out it was actually an employee of a plant across the street, and he didn't care. He just did not care that he was parking in front of a fire hydrant. So they got cameras, and they watched this cat come and go from his car. And then they went across the street and said, "Hey, look, I'm going to get a fine if you don't have this guy stop parking his car out there." Turned out to be the owner's son. And the car was there the next day, and the car was towed, and he actually had to pay the fine for the fire hydrant as well. So physical security isn't just locks, it's also managing the assets that protect your company. If there had been an incident and the fire marshal had noted that there had been a car there, it didn't matter whose car it was. As the owner of that facility, they had not taken actions to rectify it, so therefore they would have been responsible. So just know that the physical security goes well beyond locks. Think about your employees everywhere they go and what they do. So what is being monitored? What is being kept? If we are filming as physical security, how long is that data kept? It can get very expensive even in the cloud. I worked with a client, had 7 terabytes of data a week with their cameras. That's obscene amount, but because they dealt with the public, they had to keep data for no less than a year. So very expensive. Make sure that you're considering that, and make sure that you go back again to your insurance policies and make sure that there's a minimum standard they have. And if they are, make sure you're meeting it, not just in the physical, but also again, the data in terms of capturing camera security and that footage and what you do with it. So physical protection, challenging it can be in today's modern world, but just stop long enough to think this through and think about every employee that you have. Are they protected? And everywhere that they work in your building, can they communicate if there's an emergency? Where do they go if there's an emergency? And if they're off site, are they protected as well? So very simple questions. Just make sure you're asking the right ones. Good luck.